Humanity has been driven from Earth, but now it's time to take it back. Join the Reconquest and fight the Scourge on the Drop Zone Commander Hub at beastsofwar.com. Anime cyberpunk style meets skirmish combat in Infinity. Experience 8 high-tech factions and fight to control the human sphere at the Infinity Hub on beastsofwar.com.
Now that I have all the colours finally blocked out, I just want to show them under camera first. So checking under the close, you can see I've put a little bit of sort of a bone colour here and a blue up here, as well as added in, well, basically that was it. So I've missed out that, but that's okay. We'll come to that in a minute. I want to briefly explain the colour choices. Because we're going to be using this for the likes of our Mechanicus army in the studio, we had to basically take a look at it and see what colours were used when it was initially painted, and we found out that we had this sort of bone colour going on here and this blue. One moment. And this is sort of an example of that. Now you can see on this guy we have a bit of blue stripe and a bit of a bone coloured stripe as well, and we thought, well, we'll just incorporate those colours into it. So you see under close cam here we have our blue and our bone. Now the bone on this is a little bit darker than it is on this guy, and that's because put him down, make him safe. Because we're trying to do this quickly, we want paint to go down in one coat. So for the bone colour I used a mixture of Army Painter Skeleton Bone and a Citadel Foundation paint Kermie Brown. Mixing these together gave us this sort of palette colour here, this sort of dull yellow sandy sort of colour. It's still enough when you see it on the rest of the buildings. It's still a bone colour in general. It's just a little bit darker than the standard skeleton bone, but it goes down generally in one coat. The blue was pretty straightforward. It was just Army Painter Crystal Blue. Went down in one coat very nicely over all this, especially after a matte coat over the gloss that the ghost hint left. Now, the next thing we need to do is add some wash, and for this we are using, let me see, where did I put it? I literally just had it in my hand. We are using some Army Painter Dark Tone, and this is just going over the metal areas, and specifically just the gunmetal areas. Just lather it down. And all we're really looking for it to do is to make the metal look a little rougher and not be just as clean as it is currently. And we've been doing this to every piece of metal that is painted in the gunmetal, so including the windows and the doorways and stuff like that. And if I just wrap this up, just do this one little segment here under camera, like so. And when that's all dry, we're then left with this, and you can see how that dark tone wash has worked in on the decking here. Now, our next step is to start weathering, and for this we have two simple steps. We have a bit of streaking, dirt streaking, and we have a bit of chipping. So for the dirt streaking, I've went back to my ghost tints, and I'm using a mixture of the oil discharge, which is basically black, mixed in with a little bit of the brown. So those two have been mixed together into my airbrush. And for this, it's basically a case of using this now to streak down the walls of all this. So make it in such a way that it's still visible-ish, but kills the cleanliness of some of the areas off. And maybe over some of the decking as well. So same down all these other walls. Okay, and that's essentially it. We just want to streak a little bit here and there. I'm going to touch the top of this as well. Just stain the top of the tank up a little bit so there's a touch of brown dirt in through there as well, just to make it look a bit more industrial, a bit more heavily used. From there we're going to be working on some paint chipping. For this, I've decided to go with a very bright silver chipping, and we're using Vallejo Model Air Chrome in this case, so that's what we're using. Put a bit of that onto my palette here, and then I'll be using some sponge, as you've hopefully seen me do before, on how to make the chipping. So I just have a bit of sponge here that I'll clean up from yesterday's work. Dip it. And make sure that there's enough paint off of it to make it a useful effect. So let's start up here. All we want the chipping to do in this case is just catch edges and corners. Okay. So really focus in on the corners of the building. Work down some vertical edges, that sort of thing, and maybe even around the door frame. Anywhere that will get pretty consistent and constant use and wear and tear. And what we can do as well is go over the decked area. And what that does is give us this nice contrast between the dull, heavy used metal and the stuff that's being walked over a bit more frequently. So you can see what that looks like now with a bit of that chipping on there. That looks pretty effective. And again, you want to do the same up on the top too. Okay. This is why I said not to be too concerned about making any mistakes, because there will be steps to cover the majority of it up. So don't concern yourself too much on that. Just push on and just get the building to a point where you like it and you're happy with the effect you've got. Maybe even do some down over this stanchion as well here if I can get it back into the shot properly. Okay. Right, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to move that out of the way, and I'm going to bring in one of our big sort of fan ventilators here, and it requires the same thing. So it looks a bit dull at the minute, and we want to try and remedy that. We're going to take some more of our chrome paint. I'm just going to put some of that into the airbrush, not a lot, we won't need much. And we want to do a highlight layer on the fan blades. Make sure that's okay. So we'll start with the center point of the fan. A couple of bits of focus spray later and you get that really strong bright silver. Now for the fan blades themselves, I'm going to take the edge and then work back on the wider part of the blade. So I'll try and demonstrate it here and see if you can follow it. Try and see if this is one that you can see pretty clearly. Yeah. So sort of like that, where it's just fading, it's just feathering back from the sharp edge. So essentially that, and what you get is a sharp looking blade edge, and then as the rest of it tilts back into the device you get a little bit darker, and you just get that sort of a fade look, a nice sort of natural shadow look. Okay, and that is what we're left with in comparison to what we were at the start, where it's a lot darker and just doesn't have a lot of definition to it. But now that that's in place, that looks really effective. And I think from a good gaming perspective, you know, so sort of 3 foot away from it, standing above it, it's going to look pretty effective to me. And it'll look pretty good. Right, we have another step to do, and I realise I should have done it first instead of doing the fan. So yeah, what I'll do is go off, bring everything else up to the same level, and then we'll tackle our last piece next.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now, and be sure to check out beastsofwar.com for the latest gaming news and gaming let's plays. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe, and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.